Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on in to our round 4 live stream for the API. Looking forward to breaking down some PGA DFS, the single round slate there for Sunday, and of course, a little bit of the prop side as well here for the final round of action, which is shaping up to be an absolute banger here tomorrow. We've got studs galore at the top, Scotty Scheffler up there in second place, Kurt Kitayama somehow held on to first place out there. So tip of the cap out there to Kurt Kitayama. Hell of a round out there today. And a lot of my top favorite players in the world in contention. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. It'll be my last day in Orlando, enjoying some nice Italian dinner tonight, taking it a little bit easy on the good old alcohol. I've got a long week ahead of me next week at the Players. I've got content to get into just Monday morning. So doing myself a little bit of a favor and perhaps just scaling it back a little bit. At dinner with my Italian there, might have a glass of wine, something like that. But hopefully everyone's having a great start to their weekend here on a Saturday. I shouldn't say start, right? We're at the middle of the weekend here at this point. By the way, I hope you're having a great evening. So we got JGA down there already calling the John Rahm Revenge Tour. I tend to agree with you. So I think that's a sharp take there. We'll talk about it later. What's going on, MJ? What's going on, Mark? Yeah, I remember the question about my favorite guy that I thought I was impressed with. And I added a lot of Lipsky to my poll after the fact. I had like 5% before, but then after I talked about him on stream, I talked myself into 15%. So that went well. John Rahm, on the other hand, did not go so well. So that was actually a little conflicting. I mean, John Rahm, anytime he tends to struggle out there, you get a little bit of satisfaction out of that just because of his reaction to it. Also, my main slate lineups were hugely benefited by him blowing up. But yeah, for Showdown, that was a little bit of a bummer there. But yeah, Lipsky, hey, helped us out there. You're loving the Arnie hat? Yeah, I bought it today. Appreciate that, man. Yeah, it's one of those little, like, you can't really see it on the camera because it's so bright. It's one of those like rope hats, and I don't have enough rope hats in the arsenal, so I pulled the trigger. How was Charlie's? It was fantastic. I got a little bit sick last night, so I don't know if it was like the 4 old fashions we had, or it was perhaps the steak that was undercooked. I'm not sure what it was. So it was great, tasted fantastic. The hype was there. But the reaction to it was a little bit sour. So it was probably the alcohol. And Breakfast Ball says, yo, round 4 is going to be nasty. I agree. So let's hop into it. And it's not from the weather perspective. And I know, Breakfast Ball, you already know what's up. We were talking about it down in the Discord just a few minutes ago. But today played a lot easier than even I expected. The tour seems to, at least this year, they're taking it a little bit easy on these players. Today, they shortened like 6 holes again. So just like they had for Friday, the course didn't play anywhere close to its typical length. And on top of having the rough trimmed down a little bit, the greens, of course, a little bit slower because of the anticipated winds, both for Friday and today, which never ended up coming. Today out there in the golf course, there was essentially not a breath of wind. And I can tell you that because it was hot as ever living hell. It was sticky out there. I was sweating through my t-shirt the entire day. And anytime the tour expects there to be a lot of winds and then they don't show up, these guys are going to take advantage, right? They're going to set up the course slightly easier to try not to butcher these guys. So for Sunday, and we're just going to go right into the weather because I think it's extremely relevant with this conversation, they're not calling for that wind. You can see here in Windfinder, in fact, they're calling for 1 mile an hour winds right around midday. I have to say that, talking to a few guys that really know the weather of late, people that are actually meteorologists, believe it or not, that follow golf and have been reaching out to me, which has been hugely beneficial to how I look at the weather over the last few days and will be going forward, is Windfinder's just kind of slapdick out there. They have no idea what they're talking about. Even Willy weather is not really the most reliable. They're calling for more significant winds, so it's worth noting, right? They're in like the 5 to 8 mile an hour range over there on that side. But what I like to look at here, and what I've been told is the most accurate forecast we can look at, is this HRRR forecast. And what I have on here is, I'm bringing up, this is 11 a.m. there on Sunday. You can see there's not much wind, right? So they're calling for like 4 miles an hour across the board. This general area right here is where the golf course is at. And you can see it's blanketed by low winds down here. And you can see there's a little, it's different, right? We're not getting a chart, like, excuse me, voice is giving me some trouble here. Well, we're not getting a chart like we're getting over there on the other sites, right? So you got to read this a little bit more visually, but the highest winds that you're seeing anywhere across the board are right around 8 miles an hour. So I tend to think that this forecast on Windfinder is probably a little bit, let's say, I don't know, they're giving it a little bit too much credit, right? I don't think the winds are going to be nearly as low as what Windfinder is calling for over here on Willy Weather. I think that they're probably a little bit more accurate. And then on Windy app, right, let's go to the afternoon. So let's go to Sunday at 3 p.m. You can see it gets a little bit more significant, right? So there's little pockets of winds that start to creep in here where it does get closer to like 8 to 10 miles an hour. So this forecast on Windfinder, right, which I've been told by multiple sources now is pretty much just baloney out there. I don't know. We might just stop bringing up Windfinder, guys. Like they seem to get this wrong way more often than they get it right, and a lot of the other sites seem to be in agreement. You know, when Windfinder's saying another thing. So that's something that I'm just going to do going forward. Is starting to look at this kind of model. Let's go towards the end of the day, right? 6 p.m. You can see the winds actually drop a little bit, get closer to the 4 to maybe 8 mile an hour range at a few spots across the map. And the reason why I bring up the whole map here, right, and don't just look at a specific area, is because these forecasts, these models are extremely inaccurate, right? They're, you know, best guess projections at the very best. There's also going to be slight chances of weather throughout the day in terms of precipitation. In Florida, it's extremely hard to predict when it's actually going to rain. So what forecasters typically do is they'll give, like, let's say a 10 to 12 hour window and call for like a 40 to 50% chance of rain that entire time. So tomorrow, it might be early in the day. I think most of the forecasts were calling for rain potentially right at the end of the day, at least the most significant rain coming in right around like 4:35 p.m., which if that ends up happening while the leaders are coming down the stretch, I mean, first off, I've got to have my rain gear on, right, boys? I got to make sure I'm prepared for that. We're going to have an umbrella out there just in case, but it could lead to some good old carnage. So the forecast, it's shaping up to be, you know, your typical wind, I shouldn't say typical weather advantage, at least from like the green side. So if we take a look at the stats from today, you can see that the morning wave played slightly easier than what you had in the afternoon. In fact, right around a third of a stroke. And then you have to consider that the guys at the bottom of the board were out of contention, lower tier players in general. Then the guys at the top of the board, right, it's top 5, top 10, top 15 player galore, and the guys that were in form and winning this golf tournament, right? But as a whole, those players performed worse than the guys that went off earlier on. So this third of stroke difference, I think in terms of like actual conditions, was probably at least half a stroke, if not even closer to like 3/4 or even an entire stroke between the two waves when you adjust for quality of player, all of those sort of things. So for Sunday, knowing that winds are going to be pretty consistent, pretty much exactly what we got today, right? Winds were relatively consistent. Windfinder here, right? They were calling for like 20 mile an hour wind gusts. That never happened, right? So just, I don't even know why I looked at their forecast on there, right? They're just full of baloney. Let's look at the Willy Weather one, where you can see it was relatively consistent, right? Like it was in that quote unquote 15 to 20 mile an hour range all day, which I have to say, even Willy Weather here, just completely incorrect. It was not that windy out there. So these weather sites just really got to get it together. I guess that's the MO there. But in terms of DFS strategy, what we need to do to make sure we're, you know, going out there and playing optimal guys is I think target the early guys, right? And sure, I'm going to bring up the projections now, right? For round 4 showdown, we do have placement points to consider, which is a great segue to get into the player pool here. But it's not the end all be all to a difficult course. Tomorrow, right, the scoring average with low winds, if I had to put a guess on it, it's probably like 1 over par. I actually think it might be slightly more difficult than what we get tomorrow for a variety of reasons. So the weather is not going to be the reason why. Breakfast Ball kind of hinted at it before. He thought it was going to be a little bit brutal. Maybe the rain, right, introduces a wrinkle there towards the end, but that's not what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is what I saw out there on the golf course today, which was them double cutting greens. I only saw them doing this on hole 1, right? So they start towards, they were doing it at 3:30 p.m. I'm sure they went from hole number 1 to hole number 2, but no golfers were on that side of the course, right? So I wasn't going to walk holes 2, 3, and 4 to see if they continued their work. But I watched them maintain and try and take care of hole number 1, take all the divots off of the fairway, which, you know, if you've never seen a golf course set up before, there's just so much that goes into it. You know, a golf hardcore guy like me, I sat under a tree, I sipped on a seltzer out there and just watched what they did, because it was a good thing I did. Well, they double cut the greens, which typically, right, they take the mower over it once, they cut it to a specific height, but they went out there, they cut it to their typical height, and then they ran over it again at a lower rate, and they cut it even shorter than they typically do. On top of that, they also double rolled the green. They had 4 people on rolling machines out there rolling the greens. And you could hear the guy even said, I want these double rolled. I want them as firm as humanly possible. That's literally what he told his maintenance crew out there. So I heard that. I was watching that. I was kind of just snickering to myself. I'm like, oh, they must see the forecast for tomorrow, right? That's calling for next to no wind. So I know the course, at least the forecast, the weather looks a little bit more advantageous. I don't think it's going to play easier. These guys are going to be playing on rock hard, the fastest greens they're pretty much going to see the entire year. And the pin locations, which we didn't even go through, we'll go through it when we go through the prop side later, are just as devilish. I mean, you're talking about tucked pin central, 18 is the back right pin, where you have to cover all that water. You miss in the right rough, it's an automatic bogey, right? If not a double, if you try to go for it. A lot of the par fives are back pins. The par threes, you'd have to imagine played to the full length this time around. It's not going to be easy sledding, and particularly for the guys that are in those PM wave conditions when these greens get even crunchier than what they're going to be in the morning. So when we take a look at the pool, again, I'll just do the weekly PSA when it comes to Sunday Showdown. You do get placement points, and they do matter, right? I have to say that. But like I mentioned, they're not the end-all be-all. The only time they really are the end-all be-all is like a U.S. Open, a PGA Championship, when the scoring average might be 2.5, 3 strokes over par. And if you get a really nasty weather day, like what you had for the last day at the U.S. Open, well, then placement points, are a big part of the picture, right? Because the guys at the top are going to play as conservative as humanly possible. But with low winds, somebody's going to take this course low tomorrow, right? Just because the greens are firm and fast doesn't mean that you can't make birdies. It just means that when you miss hit shots, you're going to be penalized for it more so than normal rounds, right? But you can still hit the ball to 4 or 5 feet. You just have to play the contours, right? You have to be experienced with playing in those kind of conditions. And you're going to see guys like you saw today, right? Shoot like 6 under par. And if you didn't have Terrell Hatton today, if you didn't have guys like Victor Hovland had an excellent round, obviously. A few other guys shot like 4 or 5 under par. If you didn't have those guys in Showdown, right, you didn't win a whole bunch of money today. And it's going to be the same thing. First place, you get, I believe it's 12, it might be 13 placement points. I get it. I always get that mixed up down there. But you're going to get those 12 placement points. That's 2 birdies worth, right? I know that. I've done the math on it before. It's the equivalent of essentially like 2, maybe 2.5 birdies out there. If somebody's going to shoot that 6 under par round, you're going to have them, right? So I know JGA, right, kicked us off with the live stream mentioning that maybe it's the Jon Rahm Revenge Tour. I tend to agree. I don't think that he has to finish top 5 to go out there and get you those placement points, but he's going to be going off relatively early. And I can tell you that guy was pissed off on the golf course. I mean, after every shot that I saw, he was kicking the ground. Looked like he wanted to snap his club. If you're going to give me one player out there that I know is going to bust his ass there on a Sunday, it'd be Bryson DeChambeau, number 1. And then number 2 would be a Jon Rahm, right? We've seen Bryson go out there and we know just how much of a golf nut that guy is. But Jon Rahm's the same kind of, attitude, the same kind of ego, I should say, right? Where he, had a horrible round 2 days in a row, right? Not just today. He's not going to let himself go out without fighting. So I played him yesterday. It was kind of like the reverse mush, right, for our main slate lineups. But I'm going right back to it. I mean, he's not 25, 30% owned anymore, right? Like a Scotty Scheffler, your leader. Rory McIlroy, right? 2 shots off the lead. They're going to be 30, 35% owned. You can see Rory there closer to the 30% mark. Scotty Scheffler, your leader, is obviously going to be the highest owned player on the slate. But Jon Rahm, like, you can play in conjunction with a Rory, right? Like, I'm not playing Rory in every single lineup, right? I'm just going to get my adequate leverage to the field there, which means I can start lineups down here in the 9K range. I'll have, a certain percentage of my lineups I can do that with. And then I can also get some leverage to Jon Rahm. I can do all 3 of those things and get by. So if you don't want to play Jon Rahm, right, I get it. Maybe you can try and take 2, a Scotty and a Rory, right? You could try and fit both of them into your Showdown pool. It's just that I think when you fade one of the 2, at least for the final round, you are able to get to some other kind of lineup constructions, particularly when there's 5, 6 under par rounds out there that you might want to get to, right? Because if Jon Rahm shoots 6 under par, you might not need Scotty or Rory, right? They may end up shooting like 3, 4 under par themselves, but Jon Rahm might have that 6 under par, right? 7, 8 birdie round like he had there in round 1. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, right? There's a reason why he's only 8.7% owned. And let me zoom in here, right? Give you guys a better view of these projections so you don't have to use a magnifying glass to look at them. My apologies. But there's a reason why he's only 8.7% owned. But do I think he has higher than an 8.7% chance of being in the optimal? That's for damn sure. So that's why I'm getting to that. Let's see what's going on. Let's see what's going on in chat. 40% chance of rain. Okay. So yeah, things could get dicey a little bit late. Definitely going to wear the rain gear. Chris says, had Cootie in Westmoreland today in Showdown, but only cashed. Hey, you cashed, so it works, right? We'll definitely take the min cashes when they come. But Westmoreland, I didn't see that play coming. So tip of the hat to you. That's an excellent play. And then Cootie is just an absolute stud. I didn't get to see him in person. I got to the course a little bit late this morning, but that was fantastic. Rom sold you birdie or better. Yeah, so you took him for birdies. What was his line? Like 4.5, something like that. Yeah, that was a tough line to get to for sure. I don't know what he was at. He might have been 4 on Prize Picks, if my memory serves me correctly. Yeah, that's a tough beat if you ended up taking him. He had a horrible day. Nick says, you're late, man, but you love the hat, still celebrating. Yeah, congrats to Nick. He won like, I think 4 or 5 grand today on Showdown. So yeah, tip of the cap to Nick. I know Matty Ice had a pretty solid day himself. A few other guys on Twitter tagged me, so love to see it. Joseph says Zalatoris might have to be a fade tomorrow. The flat stick is terrible. So I hope a lot of people say that. I'm not going to give away all the goods on Willie Z, but like a John Rahm, the ownership is non-existent. So if you're going to take a bunch of chalk, let's say like a Rory, Jordan Spieth, right? We'll talk about, I'm definitely playing him for Sunday. Right? If I'm going to have a lineup with Rory and Jordan in it, I might have to try and force in a Rahm, right? Or the price tag there might be a little bit prohibitive. So, another type of play that you could try and jam in to differentiate yourself might be a Willie Z. So I don't want to completely trash him. Hey, if you're not sold on the flat stick, right? I'm not going to try and convince you otherwise, but we have seen him shake that before, particularly when he was new on tour. I mean, it was like every single round he was losing like a stroke and a half putting, but over the last like 3-4 months, he's been a consistent gainer. So I don't think it's as much a worry, at least for me right now, right? Because of that recent putting stretch. I mean, if you were talking about rookie Zalatoris, I mean, yeah, he's probably not going to turn it around, right? He had some really rough stretches out there. Roman says Rory McIlroy is due for a 66. I'd hope so. If he does, he's going to win me a lot of money from an outright, also for DFS. So I'd love it. Sweet, the boards are up. We'll go through them. Yeah, and we're going to have to go through this quickly. I'll say that again. I do have a dinner reservation at 9, so let's say another 20 minutes. So we'll go through DFS here in the next 5-10 minutes and then finish it up with props, of course. Brandon says Prize Picks has Rory at 69.5 and then 70.5 for some of the mid tier. You're saying all overs? I'd be a little bit hesitant there for all overs because I do think there's going to be low rounds. It's just I don't think it's going to be super easy, right? So there's going to be overs and unders to be had. I haven't looked at the entire board yet. I would have to imagine that there's going to be players that are, have a decent stat profile, maybe that go off earlier in the day, right? When conditions might be a little bit better, that I might even take unders on. At 69.5, Rory and Scotty, I'd probably stay away from because they are going to be teeing off towards the last 3-4 groups. But if you're giving me a John Rahm, for example, right? I don't know what his line is. If it's 70 or 70.5, yeah, I would 100% take the under. So it depends, Brandon. Cheers for the fourth round, Luke, of course. I'll cheers you with my water here. It's a big old thing of Zephyr Hills. You had Victor today, so good call there, JGA. You're saying, but you're hesitant to go back. I would be hesitant. We're going to talk about some of our fades here. He's one of them. And let's just hop into it. We'll hop into chat here in a second too. I'm fading Victor Hovland, just getting that out there right now. I'm fading Scotty Scheffler here. The reason for fading Scotty is last year, even in his win, he was not solid on approach in his last round. And you've kind of seen over the last, 3-4 times he's gone into contention, and it hasn't plagued him every time, right? He won there a few weeks ago. So obviously he can still get it done. He hasn't had his best performances on Sunday. And before his winning stretch last year, right, where he ascended to world number 1, it was a well-known thing that Scotty Scheffler choked. It happened a lot. And that's why he didn't have a tour win for his first year and a half on tour and had 6 or 7 second place finishes or third place finishes, podium finishes as they call them. So if he's going to be the highest owned guy on the slate, I'm fading him. I'm fading Victor because of the around the green play. Through the first 3 rounds, he had lost over 4.5 strokes around the green. And last year, I made a joke, after the fact about this, that Victor Hovland, I saw him go to the bathroom at hole number 14. It was after 4 straight bogeys. And I made the joke. I was like, oh, he probably went in there to go throw up, right? Because he was feeling that nervous. And I couldn't see him shaking, but he was hitting some of the worst lag putts that I've ever seen. I mean, on one hole, he was like 60 feet away. He left it 20 feet short there on that Sunday. The around the green shots were as piss poor as you would expect for him. That's just kind of how he is. And it's no disrespect to Victor, but every time you get him under a pressure situation, he folds. He can't hit those around the green shots. So the only way I see him winning there tomorrow is if he goes nuclear. If he like hits every fairway and hits every green, which he could do because he's that kind of player, right? He could certainly keep himself out of trouble. But if he gets into any sort of bad situation, right, just starts to hit a few, array shots, watch out. I don't think it's going to go all that well. So I'm fading him. I'm fading Kurt Kitayama, right? He's a known choker too. He's had like 4 leads over the last few years and he's blown all of them. I'll be fading all the chalk at the bottom of the board. So Pierce and Cootie, I'm sorry. Aberg, love both of y'all, but I'm not going to play you at like 10, 15% ownership. Let's see. In this lower 7K range, like Harris English, love him to death, right? Played him in 4-round contests. I'm not going to play you at 15, 16% ownership because just getting back to the general strategy again, guys, there are going to be low rounds out there. Just because they're getting like 4 points for finishing in 5th place there tomorrow literally means jack shit. So if they're going to be 2-3 times higher owned than everybody else, it's baloney, right? You don't need to get to those kind of plays. So the guys that I am going to be playing, so there are a few chalky pieces I'll be playing. Okay, let's go through those. Rory, we already talked about. I think that he's got great momentum going. I'm getting there. One of the highest owned guys on the slate. So obviously I'm going to have to consider that ownership when I'm going through the rest of my lineup. I like JT and I also like Jordan Spieth. I'm just going to tell you right there, I'm playing them because they're my favorite players in the world. Okay. I don't care about their ownership there tomorrow. Actually, JT's not even like chalky because he's there at -5. He's only 15% owned. But yeah, I don't care that Jordan had a bad day today. I don't care that he self-admittedly said that he was so off. We've seen Jordan just snap out of it, right? I mean, rounds 1 and 2, right? Looked like an absolute world beater, was number 1 in the field in tee to green play. And then today was just utter dog shit. I mean, sometimes that's just golf. Sometimes you don't have your best stuff out there and you get kicked in the nuts. So hopefully he's the one kicking others in the nuts there tomorrow. But yeah, the ownership there, about 24%. Not going to scare me off either. In this 8K range, there's a lot of low-owned options. I mean, like Tom Kim, Fleetwood, Bradley, I guess like Keith Mitchell, I would lump into that argument too, are all going to be super low on leverage plays. In terms of like your chalk there, Jason Day starting to get some ownership after his round today, which by the way, obviously a huge play in our poll yesterday, which worked out. But not going back there, that kind of ownership this time around, right? He was one of the lower owned guys on the slate there yesterday, right? That was the whole reason to get to him. But Corey Connors at $8,100, like he's a clear fade, right? He's still getting significant amount more ownership than his peers. And though he could bounce back, right? And I kind of look for guys to bounce back. He's still getting some ownership and some steam because he's up there in the top like 10, 15 of the tournament. So I'm going to be off of those kind of plays that are just getting too much steam. Sahith Theegala, I think, is a great pivot off of a Kurt Kitayama. I mean, just head and shoulders a better player than Kurt. And from a birdie or better and fantasy scoring perspective, also checks off the boxes. If you're looking for another pivot, you can go to Davis Riley. We faded him in Showdown because of the high ownership. But after his just dreadful performance today. I saw his tee shot on 18. I mean, he duck hooked it to the left. No one is going to use him, right? He's 3.2%. He's probably even a little bit too expensive for, how he played today. But these are the kind of plays that you jam into a lineup, right? And you only need one of them, like one player that's going to be like 3% owned or less. And you can still take a Rory. You can get away with playing a Rory, a JT, and a Jordan Spieth together, which I can guarantee you I'm going to have an absolute shit ton of lineups that start with those exact 3 players. And of course, their product ownership is going to be up there. But by using the Davis Rileys of the world, the Sahith Theegalas, if we need to get there, we're going to talk about Ryan Fox here in a second at just 1% ownership. Don't got to worry about it anymore. But Ryan Fox, if you guys aren't familiar, one of the, actually, I think he's a top 40 player in the official World Golf rankings, which, by the way, are just completely obsolete at this point. So might stop using that as a reference point here soon. But Ryan Fox at $6,900, top 40 player in the world, somebody who on the DP World Tour is one of the best, if not the best player on that tour that's at least playing it regularly. And somebody I think that is trying to get their tour card. So though he's out of contention, right, he's 1 over par, I can guarantee you that he's grinding because he has guaranteed sponsors exemptions into, I believe, like 4 of the next 5 events. And one of them, I don't think he's playing the players. Maybe he is in the players somehow. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think he is. But every tournament after that, I think he's playing Valspar. I know for a fact he's playing the WGC. Will be at that event. He's going to be trying to get those FedEx Cup points and get that special honorary exemption onto the tour. So Brian Fox, way better player than the price tag. It's kind of comical, the guys that are priced around him. Definitely worth a few shots in Sunday Showdown. And a Svenny going right back to him, right? He's 10.7% owned. I have to say, like, he's definitely getting way more ownership than most of his peers, but it's for good reason. Svensson is just a way better player than pretty much everyone else in this range. And when you have guys that are higher owned than him around him, I mean, like, English is like almost twice as owned is even somebody there at 10.7%. And Alberg's higher owned. Guys like Pierce and Cootie are getting a bunch of ownership. I mean, even Trey Molnax and guys like Lipsky have pretty much the same ownership level as somebody like an Adam Svensson. Like, give me the guy who's won before on tour and that's proven it, right? Over some of those fringe type of players. So that's the idea for Showdown, guys. Like I said, we're moving this stream along a lot quicker than usual because of my time constraints we've got going on. So let's bring up the prop side and hop through any last second DFS questions. So we're still going over DFS stuff. If you have questions, go ahead and fire them now. Alrighty. And the prop section is going to be pretty quick too, guys. Just a heads up. Where are we at? Not sure on the weather. You live 30 minutes from Orlando. Yeah, I mean, they're calling for rain here. It's like a 40% chance of rain, but the meteorologists are crazy. So I'm not counting on the rain. That's for sure. If anything, it's going to hit late end of the day, right? Something like 5, 6 p.m. So probably shouldn't be a massive factor, but it could be. You never know. Nick says, tell me why I don't just lock JT and Jordan. Because you like money and don't like burning it on fire. But I'm not going to be locking them tomorrow, but I'll definitely have a bunch. Where's the Italian? I think it's North Italia is the name of it. Who is your Lipsky call for round 4? Will Gordon. Will Gordon is my Lipsky call. The man that shot 85 today goes out there, rectifies the record, goes out there, smashes, shoots like 5 under par as the first group out. So we're going to say Will Gordon, but also John Rahm. I'm going to give you an honorary second player there. One of those two is going low tomorrow in making up for the shitty round today. Let's say that. I didn't even play Will Gordon today, so it's not even personal. It's just, I can tell you, if I went out there and I shot 85, I'd try to shoot 65 the next day. There's no doubt about it. Nick says, how do you feel about a Fitz bounce back? I'm not a huge brace face fan. I have to say that. So I'm not massive on it, but he could certainly go out there and do so. He's kind of one of those guys like a Zalatoris, right? Like if you're trying to find a piece of leverage in the 9K range, more than capable of getting there. I like him a whole lot more than Terrell Hatton. So I know we were talking about fades earlier. No, he's another one of those players that I'm just not getting to. And sure, Terrell Hatton, perfect track record around here. I mean, the round today was unbelievable. Birdied 5 of his last 8 holes. Just when you have guys like you said, like Will Zalatoris or even Matty Fitz, they're going to be 3 times lower owned. You can't tell me that they're 3 times less likely to be in that optimal lineup. So, I think he's a decent play, Nick. I'm not sure I'm going to get there, but completely understand the thought process. Chris says, thoughts on Ben Taylor? He birdied his first, had about 10 foot putts for birdie. So you're saying 10-foot putts and he missed all of them? Damn. So yeah, he could have gone low. Yeah, if you're telling me that he's losing strokes putting, but the ball striking was there, definitely like that. GameCube says, I'm excited for prop time. They look pretty juicy. You will have to see. Of course, I got you, Brandon. Hey, bud, what do you think the final score will be? So in terms of winning score, let me see what Data Golf is thinking, and I'll get back to you. So let's see. I'd have to say like 12 under. That's what I would guess. A lot of it's dependent on Kurt Kitayama, right? How he plays there tomorrow. But someone there at like 6-7 under par could easily shoot like 4 or 5 under. So yeah, like 12, maybe 11 under par, something like that. That's probably what I would go with. Chandler says, felt somebody talking about my boy Spieth. Of course, I got you, Chandler. And yeah, I know you. Just you're just as big a fan of him as I am. John says, yo, Luke, sorry you're a little late. No apologies, man. It's Saturday evening. People are busy. I get it. What a day for Scotty and Rory. Hopefully Rory can pull it out tomorrow for the outright. Yeah, so you got the outright there too. Yeah, me too. I don't have an outright on Scotty. I really wish I did. Like, he was the other, big guy up top, right? That I was, going after backing this week. So obviously, though I'm fading him for round 4 Showdown, guys, like if he wins, like I'm not going to be that mad about it because of my DFS lineups. But yeah, hopefully Rory gets it done because I have the DFS lineups going there and the outright bet if he wins. Watched the first episode of Full Swing and What an Amazing Start. I still haven't watched it yet, believe it or not. I've been too busy with the Honda than this week, but yeah, I've heard mixed reviews. I've heard a few people saying that it's awesome, a few people not so sure about it. MJ says you like the JT and Spieth call, rolling with that. Not getting to Rom might regret it. Yeah, the JT and Spieth call, guys. Like I said, I'm literally playing them because they're some of my favorite players in the world, but the ownership's decent enough. Would you like Fox and Riley together, or would that be too risky? You can play them together. I just don't think it's necessary. I think you put one of them in a lineup with 2-3 pieces of chalk, you can probably get it done. But I wouldn't exclude them, right? Like if I'm building a lineup and my last man in could combine those two, like I'm not just gonna avoid that because it's two low owned players. Risky for sure, Chandler, but it depends on the rest of the lineup. What do I think about Finau? Decent play, relatively low owned. So he's getting a little bit more ownership, I have to say, than guys like a Zalatoris and a Fitz because he's there at -3. But he also has a little bit more potential to go out there and get you placement points. So yeah, I honestly, anyone like a Tony Finau, Max Homa, you could throw into the argument. Cantlay, Xander Schauffele. Obviously, Zalatoris and Fitz are going to be even more so pivot plays. But like the guys from like 3 to 5 under par, like they're all fine as plays. Like Tony Finau included there, they're going to be 15 to 20% owned, and that's probably where they should be. The one thing I'll say is like, unlike a Zalatoris, like don't play them thinking they're going to be single digit owned because they're going to be at least like I said, like 15 to 20% owned. But they're fine plays, especially the ones that are there in position. Frank says, do you think birdies are better will be a category to target? Yeah, we'll have to see the pricing. All depends on the pricing, right? Because I think there could be a decent amount of birdies made, but if they post the board at like 5-6 birdies, then who knows? So we'll take a look here in a second. Wow, Will Gordon 84, didn't know that. That's a rough day from a pretty solid player. Yeah, I saw it on the scorecard. I couldn't believe my eyes, but he's not going to do that again. Mark says, whoever told you about North Italia did you a favor. Sweet. That's good to hear, man. And Breakfast Ball says, Rom has got to be coming back for redemption. I'm thinking so. All right, let's go into these props. 3 minutes away from my deadline, so we're going to do this fast. Let's look at Underdog. Did they post theirs yet? I see they have MMA props up. Might have to fire on one of those while I'm at dinner. They did. Okay. So 4.5 birdies for elite tier guys. Rory at 4. Lower tier guys at what? Like 3.5 birdies. And these aren't even lower tier players, right? It's like Ricky. It's like Sahith of the world. Shane Lowry, like legit top end players, top 50 players in the rankings. Let's see. 4.5. Is Rory still at 4.5? Yes, he is. So looks like Prize Picks is a little bit more positive about the conditions tomorrow than what you see on Underdog. So yeah, it might be an Underdog type of day. So typically, at least over the last like 2 to 3 rounds, I feel like it's been the other way around where like they've been over projecting players in Underdog versus Prize Picks, but it looks like it's defaulted, which you got to wonder what they're looking at. So they have guys at 69.5 strokes. What's Rom at? Also at 69.5. What do they have them at Prize Picks? So same kind of thing. I'm most curious about some of these lower tier players. So we've got some 72.5s. That would be like for Harrington. Okay, I'd probably take like an over there, but like 71.5 for like some of these guys that are in contention that are going to be in slightly more difficult conditions. Like I could see good amount of fades for some of those lower tier guys, especially like bonus points, right? If they have the pressure of being in contention. Even Hovland at 70 strokes, like, he shot -1 yesterday with a hole-in-one on his record. So with Sunday pressure, slightly harder conditions, Sunday Victor Hovland, right? That's prone to, going out there and choking. Maybe that's a prop to take an over on. And for birdies, I feel like this is a fade board for what I'm looking at, guys. I know somebody before mentioned, like, are you going to just take all overs? Maybe not with like a John Rahm, right? Like, I truly think that he's just going to go out there and try and just burn the world down after what happened today. Maybe he's like the one positive stance we're taking. I mean, what do they have JT at? 70? What's Spieth? 70 and yeah, like if he was 71 or 71.5, I'd probably take his under. But yeah, it's a tough scene, I think, for like positive stances. Like there's going to be decent rounds out there tomorrow, but especially like these guys in contention, I worry about them both from the conditions. I mean, if it rains there towards the end, that would be absolutely disasterful for some of these players. And just in general, it's going to be more difficult. And with the Sunday pressure, right? So All right, let's find a few more props to add in, at least for the video here. So 3.5 for Harrington. Okay, if he was at 4 birdies, maybe we're fading that. English is at 4. Let's see, where's the 4.5 line? So the 4.5 line is elite tier players. So yeah, like you could take an English under on birdies. You could take an English over on strokes. I think both of those are, fine plays. You could go with either of those. Let's see. Obviously, you can't play them together, right? I'm just putting them in here for the video. Who was the Victor, right? Victor, I was talking about a little bit earlier. Where you at? You could take his over there. So I guess just for the sake of this, let's put the over on strokes for English, because he's prone to some mistakes off the tee. So I think with Sunday pressure, he might do that a little bit more often, which would help us out with so much water there on property. Perhaps maybe double bogeys a hole, which would be huge there for the strokes prop. All right, let's just go with that, right? I got dinner going on soon. We got to get through Underdog. We'll go with those 3 props here for the stream. And just to lock it in, we're gonna go ahead and nuke that, because I knew that these get bumped super fast. Oh, you can see that there in the top right, I hit my daily limit, apparently. Okay. Actually, I guess my logo is covering it up, but yeah, I hit my limit, so I can't even enter that. Interesting. I freaking hate Prize Picks and their limits out there. They're so scared. It's unbelievable. All right, let's go through the Underdog board now. So, like I said, they have birdies lower. So I think like 4 of these guys, like Keegan was at 4 on the other site, right? Shane Lowry, I don't think he was on the board. Like Kurt Kitayama, was he also at 4 birdies? Just to get a reference point here. Where you at, Kurt? Yeah, he's at 4. Let's see. Do they have Kurt? Do they have a Corey Connors on here? Is the question. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, so like if you're going to take any supportive stances, right, I think you take this bottom end of this Underdog board, where maybe you take the guys going off slightly earlier, right, for overs on birdies. Like Ricky Fowler has like a medium tee time towards the middle of the day, right? It's not the worst pick. Looking at this one here at Tom Kim, like maybe you take his over on birdies. Let's see, they're at 71.5 strokes. What are their strokes lines on Prize Picks? Let's see, where are you at, Willie Z? They gotta have Willie Z on the board, right? I mean, they don't. Okay. Do they have Tom Kim? They don't have Tom Kim, or they do have Tom Kim. So 71 strokes. He's what, 71.5 over here in Underdog? Yeah, like I like either of these ones for Tom Kim. You could take either of those props. I'd be okay with it. Just he's better than your average player, right? So I'm not as worried about him, particularly going off early. Yeah, I don't know. The board here on Underdog, just I wish they had the other props up, right? Like the bogey props, they could be huge for us here on Sunday. Those par 3 props could be huge for us. So I'm probably gonna wait to put anything in until I see that. But yeah, that Tom Kim prop stuck out. Will Zalatoris, like over on birdies, like I actually think that's probably my favorite prop I've seen so far. Let's go to the top. Are there any fades on Underdog? Probably not, because the board's priced a little bit higher. Yeah, I'm probably staying away from fades on Underdog. Let's try and find another 3.5 birdies. Corey Connors, I don't like the putter with. Kurt Kitayama, I don't like the fact that he's your leader, right? He's going to play a little bit more conservatively, so I probably stay away there. Shane Lowry, Adam Scott. Scotty's going off relatively early, so maybe that's a spot to get to. You know, Ricky, I had him in there before, so let's just go with that. And strokes or birdies for Tom Kim is the question of the day. All right, let's go over chats, questions, and then perhaps add in this card. Where are we at on here? Crunk says, what time are prop bets coming out on the Patreon? Probably like an hour or 2 from now. I'm going to dinner, so I'll obviously be preoccupied with that. But when I get a little bit of time, I'll peek at the boards and whatnot and post them on there. It'll be very similar to the last 2 days. So if you've been on there the last 2 days, it'll be the same kind of thing. Bogeys dropped to Underdog. Okay, let me refresh my screen. Okay. We still got all those props in there. Yes, I do. Let me go ahead and add the Tom Kim prop before I forget, right? And let's do the birdies. Let's keep them all birdies or better, right? Let's do them all at 3.5, get a little bit of correlation. And let's take a look at the bogey lines. So especially for guys in contention, I like the idea of getting to bogey. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take my top 2 birdies. We're going to take Zalatoris and Fowler. I'm going to play those other birdies and other cards, I'm sure. But I know there's going to be some bogey guys I want to take here. They have 2 bogeys on some of the... You know what? We're only going to play a bogey card right now, boys. Okay. So we got to find the guys in contention at like 2 bogeys. The guys in contention that are maybe not the best players. 2.5 for Cantlay. We could go back there. That cashed today. Jason Day's at 2.5 bogeys. He's not in contention though. 3 bogeys. I don't know if I'd want to fade that. I mean, you could see guys go over, right? But 2.5 is a different thing. And at Kirkiyama, they have it 3.5 bogeys. So I guess they have slightly accounted for it. But the top of the board, the reason why I got so excited about is I saw the guys at 2 bogeys. I mean, that seems like excessive. Like people average like 3.5, 4 bogeys per round here. Maybe Scotty over bogeys. I know it's not the safest pick, right? It doesn't feel great ever fading Scotty, but like he's in first place. Like I have a hard time believing he doesn't at least make 2 bogeys, if not 3 or 4. Max Homa, like you could even fade him. He's prone to making a bunch of bogeys. Over on Victor Strokes, right? He was at 70 on the other site too. Like you could take that fade here. But just for the sake of this card, let's let's see. Are there any other strokes or bogey props that make sense? Fitz is good at saving par. Haddon, you could fade. Actually, yeah, I like Haddon here. Let's see. Do I want to get rid of Homa or Scotty? Probably Scotty, right? Like Scotty, just so scary to fade. So let's take him out of there. Any other bogey props that stand out? Not really. Rest of them seem pretty spot on. I don't know why Will Zalatoris doesn't have a bogey line because that would be absolute money. So let's add the Will Zalatoris over on birdies, right? So I guess we can still play him, just perhaps in the other direction. And the reason why I would take his actually, he do have his bogeys on there. He's at 2.5 bogeys. I just can't read. Apologize out there, boys. Let's right. You'd have to think that he goes over on these bogeys. Like he's just not playing all that sharp right now. But I also really like, so I want to explain this, right? I like the over on both because he's been so aggressive and he has to be aggressive, right? Playing from so far behind that we know that he's going to try and make as many birdies as possible, but he's also going to play with reckless abandonment, right? So he already makes a good amount of bogeys on tour. And tomorrow he's probably going to be even more aggressive. So I could see him going over both of these props. So I guess just for the sake of this, let's put Will Zalatoris over birdies and let's put Ricky Fowler over birdies. Let's go with a 6x. So we insured this here. Let's go let's do $125. Let's make it an even $750 payout. And that's what we'll go with on that side. So Max Homa over bogeys, Haddon over bogeys, and then over birdies, which I talked about before for Zalatoris and Ricky Fowler. So I went way over my time limit here. We'll go over any last second questions. Then I got to hop out of here because I got a dinner reservation to hop to. Jimmy says Prize Picks really ain't the move tomorrow. Yeah, I thought there were a few props that were okay. I mean, it's a classic fade board, right? So if you're going to play on Prize Picks, I guess this is what I'll leave you with is make sure that you play cards that you're not getting screwed on the payout, right? So maybe it's 3-leg flexes. Maybe it's even 4-leg flexes, but you're still going to get the 5.5x for getting them all right. Go in that direction if you're going to play on Prize Picks because, like I said, like the only under I saw was John Rahm, right? Like, and even that's dicey with the scoring average probably going to be like a 73 tomorrow. So yeah, I tend to agree with you there. Just be careful if you go that direction. JJ says you're liking Scheffler over 4.5 birdies. I'm not sure I agree with the Sunday player thing, man. I mean, he did last year that 3-event stretch. Before that, he had a reputation for choking. So I would slightly push back on that, man, but he's a stud, right? You can definitely play him. I'm not against it. Nick says, what's up, Luke? Love the streams. You're about to cop the Patreon. Love it, man. Let me know when you get in there. I'll get you a link to the Patreon. The Discord, obviously. You have a link to the Patreon already. It's in the link of the video. It's Magic says under on JT on bogeys. What's he at, like 2.5? Or was he at 3? They juice him up to 3, and that's why you're saying that. Let's check. Is that 2 bogeys? I probably wouldn't take you're saying under or over? You said only because you think JT is going to win. Okay, that makes sense. And you know I'm a huge JT fan. But at 2 bogeys, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't hate the over. Like, I know that we took Max Homa on that card. Like, you could take the Justin Thomas over 2 bogeys, and I wouldn't hate it. But maybe it's a good thing I didn't take it, right? Because I'll admittedly be hoping that he plays well tomorrow. So I'm right there with you. And Mark says, thanks for the help. Enjoy the pasta made from scratch tonight. Appreciate it, man. So that's all we've got here. Gotta hop on out of here. I appreciate everyone stopping by as per usual. Make sure to hit that like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content in the future. Much like I was here for the API, I will be at the Players Championship for the entire week. So I'll be there as early as Wednesday going through the practice round. We'll do our normal live stream. I'll talk about what I saw out there. And then just like this event, all of our live streams from on site, I'll be bringing you guys the goods. So looking forward to it. Hopefully we have a strong end to the week. I do have a few lineups in large field main slate contention. So hopefully maybe Spieth and JT, right, can bring some of that magic there. We can get a Rory McIlroy win. That would also be huge. But whatever you guys are rooting for on Sunday, right, whether it's for Showdown, props, or even your main slate, I wish you guys the best of luck. And I'll catch you guys next week for all of the content for the players.